Alan McDowell.
Alan McDowell, Memory Programs. Again, clarification, identification, and investigation. Every individual deserves the right to have certified documents in real time and transferred from the police department to the hospitals, jails, prisons, and from the schools to each also. All citizens should have the right to augment any and all files before trial without being restrained, drugged to the point of memory loss that could inhibit their ability to augment and defend themselves, and not be provoked by verbal or physical violence by hospital or jail workers. All individuals should have the right to certified documents. So I'll give you an example. My ex-girlfriend's husband he became my DSHS financial worker for food stamps, and he looks into my files and he's asking inappropriate medical questions. And so I had a problem with that. I worried about it for quite some time, and then I told my family members that I had a problem with it, and then they send SPD after me. And so I come back and I have problem after problem after problem getting a verification or a certification or anything. They say, oh, you're talking about food discrimination or something, and I keep going back and going back. After about a year, I finally end up with a file that he is who they say he is, but it was all a delusion. And then what this isn't certified, there's two different documents here, and they come back to me, well, we don't certify documents and blah, blah, blah. So another problem I had, is getting files transferred, or FBH came after me. I used to work for Chief Straub's secretary before she was ever in the police department. One of her statements in the, and we're not talking about Cotton, but one of her statements was Alan's primary work was coordinating the Reflections Memoirs project. Alan has coordinated this project from start to finish. He began with establishing rapport and interviewing members' life histories, and then wrote memory books. Some of these books totaled up to 20 pages, and when finished totaled about 30 books. Our seniors cherished these reflections, and we were grateful for the opportunity. Well, FBH said it was all delusion, schizophrenia, that I was going to build a business out of that years ago, and then came after me and used it in court to lock me up and detain me. And when it comes to schools, there are records in here. It costs $300 to get some of my weightlifting records out of a picture, but they're about 100, they might be 50 to 100 pounds off because it was earlier in the year. So again, we need real time from schools, real time from the police department, and into jails and hospitals, and have the individual to know why they're there and that someone doesn't slander up a report. Thank you for your time.
George McGrath. Great job. Brian Donahue.
Well, Mr. Stuckert and members of the council, I'm here today, essentially, I guess, asking for an agenda item for the council. I'm a father and a person who works in a university, and I'm concerned about gun violence. And I believe that Spokane should enact legislation modeled on the plan passed in Seattle this fall to tax firearms and ammunition sales within the city's jurisdiction, and use the proceeds for researching and implementing best practices for gun violence protection and prevention. I think that approach treats it as a public health issue, which I think is the best way to approach the problem. I have school-aged children, and I believe that as a father, one of my responsibilities is to care for them and protect them. I know that some fathers, probably some in this room, consider keeping a gun in the house one way to fulfill that responsibility. I happen to disagree with that judgment. I think there's good reasons not to. But my concern is not that argument. My concern really is the moment when my wife and I go to work and the kids are in school, and then I'm left to rely on the preparation of the school staff and the goodwill and the mental health of my fellow citizens. And I don't know that I can trust the goodwill and mental health of my fellow citizens as well as maybe we used to be able to in the past. I grew up 20 miles from Newtown, Connecticut. Some of my high school friends now live near there. In fact, one had a kid at the school at the time of the massacre there almost 3 years ago. And so I feel like I don't have, I don't want to sit back anymore. It's not the kind of thing I do, and I don't normally come to speak at the city council. But rather than sitting back, I feel like I have to ask for action. The other reason I'm here is also, like I said, I work in university. We know that universities have been targets of gun violence in the past. And we saw in the paper just recently that EWU had an incident without, fortunately, actually actual violence, but a threat of violence that took place just within the past couple of weeks. So there are people I talk to, faculty that I talk to are concerned, right? They're worried. There are students in our classes who have mental health challenges. If they're not medicated or they go off their medications, we just don't know what's going to happen. And I feel like if the federal government is not going to take appropriate steps to address this issue, then I hope that at the local level we can make progress on it. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Bill Boomer?